All right, so today's just a little bit windy, but I've been thinking about what video I was going to put out next, and I think the video that I'm going to put out next is probably the most important video of all, and that is the experience of where I was and where I am today, and how I got there, and how I'm actually making this YouTube channel right now or sending out these messages, and how I can say these are messages from the universe. So I'm going to tell you my story. All right. I believe it really started for me when I was 9 years old. That was my first experience that I had with God. And I was living in a foster home at the time, and the lady next to the foster home asked my foster mom if she could take us to her church. So it was me and my sister. We went to church that day and didn't really think that much of it. I think I was like 9 years old. So, but I had the most profound experience. I remember being in the pew, and everybody was singing and things like that. And then the pastor was just saying, anybody, just calling people up to pray, up to the front. And I literally felt like this hand grabbed me right here and like literally pulled me to the front of the church. And when I got to the front of the church, I didn't even know what to do. Like, I had no idea. But I felt so much power, I'm going to say, and energy and overwhelmingness of and I just cried. I just cried and I just prayed, and I was like, wow, this is just like an amazing feeling. So I'm going to say that was probably my first time that I experienced God. So shortly after that, because I was in a foster home and I went through a lot of stuff in my younger childhood, I used to have nightmares like every night, and they were just like horrific nightmares where I would wake up in a sweat. I would be like crying because they were terrifying. So after that experience that I had, I remember one night praying to Jesus, and I was like, Jesus, please take these nightmares away, because I'm tired of waking up. Whew, it's getting a little emotional. I'm tired of waking up and having these nightmares that I've been having. So, again, I think those are my confirmation that Jesus is here with me. He's always here. Anyway, so from that time that I prayed, I never had another nightmare again from that day until I was in my teenage years. So, and that was amazing because I didn't even realize it until I was like in my teenage years, that the nightmares just completely went away. So that was like my second kind of thing that I had as far as experiencing God. So later on, just live life. I got married at a really young age, at like 19, right out of high school. I got married, and I think I was in my 20s, and just living life, just having a job, being married, just living life. And I think I was in my 20s when I started to question, like, who's right and who's wrong with who God is, because I really wanted to know. Like, it was like, okay, we have so many different religions out there. Like, who is wrong and who is right? I just want to know this. I want to know, like, which church should I be going to? So I started going to all of them. I went to like the Presbyterians. I went to Christian. I went to, oh my gosh, what are they? Gosh, I'm going to call them holy rollers, because there's the white ones and then there's the black one, the holy roller churches. I don't know if there's another name, but that's the name I gave them. So, yeah, the Baptists, like any church, the Mormon, like any church that you can think of is what I went to. So the only one I didn't go to is the Catholic, because I just never felt connection with the Catholic religion at all. So, so anyway, I went to all these churches. And so all along I was going to all these churches. I was asking God, like, which one is the right church? Like, who is right? Right? Okay. So then I started having some like crazy experiences when I started asking and going to all these different churches, and crazy experiences where I was just, it was a little bit overwhelming for me. it was really overwhelming for me because they were scary to me because I didn't understand what was happening. And just to give you an example of some of the experiences, and it was good experiences. I'm not saying that they weren't good, but then I was getting a lot of rejection when I tried to tell anybody my experience, and it was kind of scary for me. It's like, okay, am I really experiencing this, or is something else going on? So one of the experiences I had is I just got done with one of the churches I was in, and I had to go to a town neighboring. I was going to get, I think it was like a humidifier or something, I don't know. But I remember going into the store, and I was so happy, like on the way there, I was feeling good, you know, because I just got done with the church service. I was feeling great. And I was on my way home, and then I looked up, and I saw Jesus in the clouds. Like Jesus in the clouds. Like there was Jesus in the clouds. And I was driving, I was like, okay, like you question yourself when that stuff happens. You're like, am I really seeing this? And I knew that I was, because I was looking right at it. But you really do question yourself. And why I started getting scared, because so many things like that were happening. Like I was getting like visions and stuff in my mind. And I got really scared because when I started telling people about it, they were thinking that they would say things, okay, well, nobody can see God, and you're delusional because you didn't see that. So at that point in time, I was like, you know what? Okay. I backed away. And I told God, I pretty much just said, look, I cannot handle this right now. And I don't want to experience this anymore. And you know what's funny? I didn't. For years. For years and years and years, I didn't experience anything. I was just living my happy, normal life. Everything was whatever. It is what it was. Oh, there goes a win. All right. So then later on, had children, went through a move, and then that's when it started up again. And it started up again. How it started is because it was 2010. I started seeing 11s everywhere. I mean, it was so crazy. It was on the hour, every hour. It was in signs. I heard it on the TV, on the radio, 1111, just receipts that I would get. I mean, it was literally everywhere. And it got to the point where it was like, okay, I had to pay attention, because there's no way that I would see these 11s like everywhere, all the time, every day for months. And I was sitting at a campfire one time, and I was just telling everybody, it's like, man, I'm seeing these 11s and I don't know what they mean. Like, it's just like, they're everywhere. They're like all around me. And I was just saying, I bet if you look at your watch right now, it's 11:11. And guess what? Sure enough, she looked at her watch and it was seriously 11:11. Like, I can't. And you know, right then I didn't even understand like what that was. Now I understand kind of what it was, and I believe that was just my the beginning of my spiritual awakening, and the beginning of my openness to start seeing things. So, and that's how God was kind of like gradually putting me in there, like, okay, here we comes, kind of get ready again, right? Like you put me off for a really long time. This is kind of how I felt about it now, looking back. It's like God was saying that you put me off for such a long time, but now you're ready. Now it's time for you to start experiencing this again, okay? So at that time, 2010, I was seeing it for like months, probably for the whole year. And then 2011 rolls around, and at that time I get a divorce. And I think, well, maybe that's why, maybe that's why I was experiencing those 11s, because I was going to have such a change in my life. So actually I did have a change in my life. Anyway, moved on from that marriage, kind of lived my life. And then I started another relationship. And in this relationship, it was probably about 2013, I think, is when around there, of when I had my like huge spiritual awakening. I mean, this was just like crazy. Like, it was like, bam. Okay, and this is what happened. It was kind of weird, but okay, this is what happened. So You know, honestly, I think I remember asking God for wisdom. I remember asking God for wisdom, like, because again, it was kind of getting back into, I want to know who I am. Like, I really do. I want to know, like, who's right. I want to know if I'm doing the right things in my life. So I remember just asking God for wisdom from it. I want to know what the 11 levens were. I wanted to know what they are. So I remember just saying, look, give me some wisdom on this. Let me know, right? And I think that really is um, me like allowing myself to know. And that's why I tell a lot of people at this point is like, if you want to know something, first ask and then allow yourself to know the answer, like truly be open to the answer. And I think that's what actually set me up to what happened next in my life as far as my spiritual awakening. So pretty much what it was is a dream that I had. And the dream is I was this queen and I was sitting in this castle on the throne in the middle of the room. And over to my left-hand side, there was a stained glass window, but it was open. And there was a crow, which I thought at the time, sitting on the ledge of the window. And it flew over to me and I'm feeding it just like this. I'm just feeding it and I'm talking to it and I'm just like having conversations and then it just flies out the window and I wake up. And that doesn't seem that profound, but it was. Later on I figured this out. So anyway, I got up from the dream, and at that time I always looked at my dream because I thought it was like super, super important. And when I started looking at my dream, it said that a crow is what I looked up, and a crow means it's a symbol of like death. And it's kind of like you see crows all over like battlefields and everything like that. So it's a symbol of death. But then the second thing that I wrote, it means uncontrollable change. And then at the time, like I said, I was with a partner at the time, or a guy that I was in a relationship with, and he was sitting across from me, and we didn't have the best relationship. You know, it wasn't terrible, but it wasn't good either. So I remember looking at him and saying, I wonder if I'm going to leave him this time. You know what I mean? Maybe that's my uncontrollable change. Well, no, that wasn't it, actually. That was it, but that wasn't it. What it was is that God was actually going to start like openly communicating with me. I know, right? Okay, so I started getting like things happening to me, and which now I term as, which you guys won't get this right now, but when it starts happening to you, you're going to start getting it. It's called experience equals confirmation equals knowing. So what I would do is I would have an experience, and then I would have a confirmation of that experience, and then eventually I would actually start getting to the knowing of that experience. Like what I'm experiencing is real. Like no one's going to tell me that what I'm experiencing isn't real because I experienced it. I went through this. You know, I posted another video that I was talking about when I had the Last Supper with Jesus, and that was one of my really, really profound things that I had, or experiences that I had. And you guys aren't really going to understand this right now, but I'm going to try to explain it to you, or like how from my experience and how I experienced about God, how God showed me who he was. Okay, so sorry, I should turn my thing off, but I have messages coming in. Okay, so I'm going to start with how God showed me, or how to communicate open, or be open to the communication from God. So the first thing that he told me to do is to quiet the world around me. That means no TV, no radio, unless it was like positive music. I could listen to positive music, and no outside sources of other people. And I didn't figure that one out until later. And this is the reason why. I started having these experiences where God would like literally talk to me. And then I was so excited about it. I started going to church. And I'd go to church and I'd try to like share my story of what happened at church. And these people were like, you can't talk to God. I'm like, oh, okay. So then it's kind of like, it was kind of funny to me because God was like, he's like, they're convincing, but I'm more convincing. So I was like, okay, yeah, okay. Like, so pretty much what I mean is by surround yourself with positive people, not necessarily godly people. And like I said, because when I went to what I thought were positive, godly people, they were the ones that were telling me that I couldn't talk to God. So yeah, and actually I learned a lot from actually going to church, which I'm like, okay, I learned a lot from that now. I'm not necessarily knocking anybody that goes to church, but you really do have to listen to my story with this and some of the things that was happening when I first started communicating with God. Phew. All right, so he wants me to say right now that church is not a building. Church is in here. This is your church. If you have a question, ask your heart, because that's your church. Okay, I'm just going to continue from here. So anyway, I surround yourself with positive people that encourage you, that want to hear your stories. And if nobody wants to hear your experiences and what's happening to you, then you know what? Don't talk to anybody. Because I had a lot of that too. And actually, what I was so excited to share everything that was happening to me. And then God says, you know what, Carol, they're not going to understand this right now. Like, they cannot have the experience from your perspective. They have to have the experience from their perspective to understand it. So I could tell my experiences all day long, but they're not going to understand it because it wasn't their experience. It took me a long time to get that. And even now, I'm like, okay, well, what, I already expect people to know like a lot of things, but it's not. It's really hard to kind of, because it's my experiences. So I feel like I have to like release the energy and just kind of let the energy go out there so people can have their own experiences with it. Anyway, getting back to it. Silence the world around you. No TV, no radio, no outside sources unless they're positive people that are encouraging you and sending you great messages. And then what you do is you just ask a question. Any question. It could be anything that you want to know about anything. Then you have to be willing to listen to the answer. And when you hear the answer can come in many, many different forms and ways. It just depends on you. But God very rarely uses words. And the reason why God doesn't use words is because words are super primitive. I don't think people realize how primitive words are. And words are labels, and that's all they are. The example I kind of give to this, I love to give, is the word tree. So when people think of tree, I mean, everybody could think of every single different type of tree. It just depends on what that tree word means to that person. Like, I could think of an apple tree, somebody else can think of an oak tree, somebody else can think of a maple tree, and I mean, the story goes on and on. So I mean, you could think about, there's so many, I mean, probably thousands of different trees, but it's just one word, tree. So it depends on how everybody actually labels the word. I gotta pause for just a second because my daughter, hang on. Okay, back. Sorry about that. Okay, so God will very rarely communicate to you in words because words are way too easily manipulated. And that's just the example that he gave me, because all they are is labels, and it's labels that we give words from our own perspective. So they won't always work, and people can really change the message that they're going to be getting. But the way that God generally talks to you is through your experiences. So again, it goes back to the experience equals confirmation equals knowing. You're going to have an experience. Let me try to think of one off the top of my head. The one that's on the top of my head is a major one that, not a lot of people are going to understand right now. But actually, God showed me that time does not exist. And that's a long story. That's actually another video that I'm going to love to make for you guys, but I don't think it's time yet. So, but that's just the one that the experience that's actually come to me, that actually God showed me, like that time does not exist. Time is just a thing that we need in this dimension that we're in, so we can make sense of the dimension that we're in. So anyway, ask any question that you want. Any question that you want. If you want to know, if you want to have experience that about time, ask that question, and then ask God to bring those experiences to you. But don't be scared of the experience that comes to you, because that's what happened to me when I was younger. I started to fear these experiences that were coming to me, and then I was like, whoa, that's too much for me to handle. Like, I don't want to do that. So yeah, you got to be open and allow the answers to come to you. So that's the first thing that you need to do. And then after that, honestly, you know, the answers will come so naturally. And then eventually God will start using just words with you when you start kind of understanding more of who God is. Ask anything, because God's ready. There's probably going to be a part 2 to this.